So meanwhile, now I get to bring on my very, very dear friend, Tricia McCannon. And, you know, I have her whole bio in front of me as an amazing mystic and author of these beloved books. I mean, the first book on angels I read was Tricia McCannon's book. And I just want you all to know the very first tour I ever went on of a spiritual nature was with Tricia McCannon. This woman has her pulse on the mystery schools around the planet, the mysteries that we all want to connect to. She's a goddess. She's a healer. She's outstanding. And Tricia, I just am so happy that you're here to speak to us today on all of this portals to ascensions. So I want to just welcome you.
Thank you, Joni. It's such a pleasure. And it's wonderful to be introduced by you, my beautiful girlfriend from, California, who's such a great painter yourself of angels and higher dimensional beings. So thank you so much, darling.
Yes. And I want everyone to know something about Tricia. I met her. She did these readings for me. She's astounding. She walked in my house, saw interdimensional beings. And so I just want you to take in everything she says to us. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, we have a lot to cover today, and I'm sure you guys probably have had a full plate with all the wonderful speakers on Thursday and Friday. And so I want to thank Neil, of course, in Portal to Ascension for putting on this amazing event once a year. And as you know, I do a lot of events for him. If you go to portaltoascension.org, you'll find probably, and put in my name, you'll probably find a dozen presentations that I've done for him over the years. I have actually a new one coming up next Saturday, which is on the Divine Feminine and Sacred Masculine, for those of you who are on that page and really wanting to understand how that can help to heal and balance our world. And also there'll be the Pyramid Conference on, I think, Sunday, June the 6th, and I'll be speaking about Atlantis there. But today we have about 115 slides to do in 1 hour, so we're going to be flying through this today. I'm going to go ahead and do share screen, and we are just going to get going. This will be super fun. Lots of images. So, okay, we're talking about Ascension. Neil said an Ascension conference, so I could talk on this subject for about 3 days. There is so much to say, but we are going to squish everything we can into 1 hour. When we start talking about Ascension, of course, the conversation we're having is about the shift of the ages and the new earth, and what does that mean? And we're going to cover some of those great highlights today. Yes, as Joni said, I'm an author of 4 books. You can just find me on TriciaMcCannon.com or TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com and look them up. I have had a mystery school that I have students all over the world that I've taught for about 14 years called the Phoenix Fire Mystery School, where there are 12 classes that you can actually order, and I send them to you. They're 100 to 180 pages each, and there's a whole 12 of them. So you can find all that on my website, TriciaMcCannon.com. There's also another website, though, I want to turn you on to for those of you who are interested in spirituality and having your own direct experiences with masters and sages. And that is a website called The Way of Truth, mysteryschool.org. And hopefully Joni will put all this stuff in the chat so that you can write it down, because I know we're going fast. But this is a path that I've been on since I was 19 years old, where I've been initiated by these profound masters and sages who are working with human consciousness behind the scenes in order to help elevate us, to help make us aware that we are souls with bodies, and we're not bodies that might possibly have souls. And so that's a real important shift in consciousness. And once you begin to experience that for yourself, it can shift your whole world for the better. And you begin to have these higher dimensional experiences that Kathleen was talking about, and even Grant alluded to. So we want to start with the $24,000 question: what is Ascension? That's a big one, isn't it? Well, probably the first time most of us hear that term is at the time of Jesus, 2,000 years ago. We hear that Jesus ascended, he ascended on the mountain, he was taken up into the heavens, he was raised into the heavens. And of course, there's lots of art that tells us this. So ascension is the raising up of someone or something. Now, other spiritual teachers are said to have also had these similar kinds of experiences. For example, Enoch in the Old Testament, the scribe, the story is that he was raised up by these messengers or angels and taken to a place called Mount Hermon. And there he encountered these gigantic, very tall beings that seemed to be luminous with light, that they had technology that he did not even have a vocabulary for. And he put all this into a series of 10 books called the Books of Enoch. Now, these were very well known within the ancient world, but they were taken out of the Old Testament because I think that the political powers that be within the Roman Empire that became the Roman Catholic Church were afraid that people would realize that he was having experiences with either higher dimensional beings or tall, physical, long-lived beings that were extraterrestrial. And they didn't really want that because they were teaching a monotheism, and the Elohim is the plural, of course, of the gods, and Anunnaki, of course, is the plural of those who came from the sky. So we also have accounts in the Old Testament like Ezekiel, the Hebrew prophet, who very similarly was said to have, looked into the sky and seen, wheels within wheels, the chariot of fire that Van Donegan talks about. And, he really did not, again, have the language to explain what this was. They didn't have airplanes or helicopters. They didn't talk about unidentified flying objects or UFOs like we do. They simply were blown away by with whatever it was they saw that was a very advanced light show. Now, Ezekiel explains that the symbols that he saw were a lion, an eagle, a man, and a bull. Many biblical writers have tried to decipher what these four things mean. But if you're coming from a place of traditional Christianity, you're not going to know this. Within the esoteric mystery schools, you would know this because these symbols all are connected with the 4 fixed ages of the 12 ages of the zodiac. Here's the bull that represents Taurus, the bull, fixed earth. Here's the lion, that's fixed fire. Here's the man, that's fixed air, that's Aquarius. And here's the eagle. Now, most of us think of Scorpio as being a scorpion, but the higher end of Scorpio is really the eagle, and even the highest level is the phoenix because it contains the entire initiatic path. So what's so special about these 4 ages? This becomes a very, very important question. And you want to remember these 4 ages because we're going to answer that question a little later on in this presentation. They're pivotal for us to understand where we are in our movement through the galaxy, where we are in terms of our ascension process, where we are in terms of our awakening, and the great cycles of time that we're going to be talking about in today's presentation. So with all of these things, we have to ask, were they having experience with higher dimensional beings? Were they having experiences with very tall, long-lived extraterrestrials whose technology was so mind-blowing, it just literally was like a science fiction movie long before there were science fiction movies out there? So were these experiences with the gods, or were these, transcendental experiences? And perhaps they were both. So regardless, the idea of ascension is someone being lifted up, right? Being raised to a higher frequency or higher dimension. So for Earth to go through ascension, which is what we're calling it in the New Age consciousness, it means to raise our planet into a higher state of consciousness. So we have to ask how that can happen. Well, it can really only happen through vibrational frequency. Frequency is the key to everything. Sound vibration governs everything. So sound creates light. Phonons create photons. And phonons, sound, vibration, and light sustains all of matter. What we call matter is really frozen, it's slowed down. The electrons and the protons and the neutrons have slowed down to the point that we experience this as solid. So matter is slowed down energy. That's what Einstein's equation E equals mc squared was all about. Energy equals matter or mass times the speed of light. So of course, this is actually a physics problem that we've discovered over 100 years ago. So when we look in the Bible, religious teachings or spiritual teachings, they talk about in the beginning was the Word. So the Word is the sound. Within the mystery schools, this is called the Shabda sound current. There are different names for it, but it's the audible life stream that literally is emanated, the or the hue. These are very, very, very high vibrational sounds that interpenetrate everything and that essentially create everything. So we experience our world as solid because we're basically as matter all vibrating around the same frequency. It doesn't mean that your consciousness might not be at a higher frequency than somebody else, but the atoms of your body, the atoms of the table and the desk and the cell phone and your kitty cat, we're all vibrating in the same basic field. So that's why we see each other. That's why we experience each other as solid. But actually, there are many more dimensions out there. Yep, there are many more frequencies out there. And if we pulled back the curtain on our reality, we would begin to realize that even in the physical plane, there's 7 subdimensions. In the astral plane, which is above it, there's 7 subdimensions. In the mental plane, there's 7 subdimensions. So there are, and then we go up into the spiritual etheric planes and the soul planes and so forth. So, many believe that there's 7 planes with 7 suboctaves. That's 48 planes. Some say that there are 12 planes or 13 planes with 12 or 7 suboctaves. That's a lot of different frequencies and planes. And this is why a lot of times people have experiences with elves or fairies or giants or ghosts. It's because those beings still exist, but they're vibrating at a higher frequency. And for some reason, you've crossed over into their frequency or they've crossed over into yours for a short period of time. This is kind of how it works. And this was all known within the great spiritual mystery schools. This is all taught within the scope of those mystery schools, because in learning to do soul journey work or soul travel, we learn how to shift our consciousness and move consciously into those levels. For example, in the physical world, our bandwidth of what we're able to see is very narrow. And just let's look at this. This is a science graph. This is how much we see. The very beautiful colors we see all around us that seem so rich, we basically see 7. And this is how narrow it is. But look at this. We've got infrared, we don't see, microwaves, radio waves, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. And we don't see them, but they're happening all around us. Just like the vibration that's going into our cell phones or our television sets. We don't see it, but it's moving through the air all around us. The same thing with our hearing. We have a very limited range of hearing. And, you can see there's low bass notes and they're high frequency notes. And we know if you go high enough, you break crystal, you break glass. If you go low enough, you literally can have the poor dolphins and the whales, you can bust their eardrums, as the Navy has done with its sonic experiments in the Pacific Ocean. So we have, again, a very narrow range, but there's a lot going on around us that most of us are unaware of. So, and in fact, maybe you don't know this, but 40 octaves around the human hearing produces above the human hearing produces what they call sonoluminescence. In other words, the movement of sound, phonons into light, happens at 40 octaves above human hearing, which is amazing. So there could be new frequencies bathing our planet that we can't see, that we can't hear, but a lot of us who are sensitive, we're feeling it. And sometimes it means that we wind up being dizzy. Sometimes we're exhausted and we can't figure out why we're so tired. But we're picking up on things that are going on behind the scenes. For example, this week, I've had a really tough week staying, energetically, because even though I've been seeing clients and so forth, I've been so tired. And I've been waking up around 4:30, 4:40, 4 in the morning. I don't know if any of you have, but, I put that out to some of the other high initiates within this path, and they've been having the same exact experience. So I was like, what's going on? Well, I found out, of course, that there's big earthquakes in Japan this week. There's floods in Italy this week. Mount Etna is going off. There's a lot of volcanic activity. There's solar flares happening this week. So we pick up on these things, even if we don't exactly know what it is we're picking up on. Right now, our planet, our entire solar system, in fact, is moving to a part of the galaxy where there are new light frequencies that are bathing our entire planet. And a lot of us that are sensitive, we feel this. So this is actually what's happening now, even though you might not be able to see it, you might not be able to hear it, but you can feel it. And you may begin to tune into it in your dream state or meditation when your brain waves move from that chatty little beta brain, which is such a busy brain, into deeper levels of alpha, theta, and delta. And in those deeper levels, we're a lot more sensitive to having more access to the spiritual information that we're really about. So sound, vibration, and light basically program all of matter, that which we can see and that which we cannot see. These new frequencies are coming to the earth from the galactic center, and they're sent to our sun, and our sun broadcasts them to all the planets in the solar system. This is how it works in every solar system. The sun is the receiver and the transmitter, and then the planets receive it. And inside of every living planet is a sun, a smaller sun, of course. In traditional science, we think of it as a molten core, but in reality, the centrifugal spin of a planet throws the matter to the outer crust, and that inner core is actually an inner sun. Once the planet dies, that inner sun dies. So the sun sends the energy into the inner core of the planet if the planet's still living, and it radiates it out. So it's permeating our cells at every level. So we have to ask, where does this light come from? Well, this is what is happening in the Milky Way galaxy right now, which is a mind blower. We literally have an explosion that is occurring at the center of our galaxy around the constellation of Cygnus, the swan, which is shaped very much like a cross. And you can see here, it's 50,000 light years tall. This is the plane of the galaxy, and this is the bubble. These are gamma ray emissions. Now, gamma ray emissions are connected with, in anthropological circles, with the development of higher consciousness. Okay, this is Cygnus, just so you see. It's really beautiful. It's kind of near the galactic center. It looks like a cross, doesn't it? It's connected with the white swan or the white dove or the divine mother, the divine feminine. And this is the location. We know that this happened about 16,500 years ago. And this marked a demarcation at the time of Atlantis, which I'm going to be talking about Atlantis in great depth on June the 6th during the Pyramid Conference. So it sent this wave of consciousness, a wave of gamma rays to activate and accelerate human abilities like telepathy and some of the telekinetic ability and so forth and so on. So this is happening, and we are literally, we're receiving it now. We are seeing it now. It may have happened in the past because obviously we have a distance of light years between our solar system and the center of the galaxy, but it's bathing our planet and our solar system now. And it's not just in our galaxy. This is happening in many galaxies. It's a multi-galactic event, which was prophesied by the Mayans. Now, gamma rays increase intelligence and brain size. This is our brain. We're constantly being flooded with good and bad vibrations. But the Anunnaki gods, when they first came down here, they had these big old craniums, which is why you see them wearing those headdresses to kind of hold their heads up. So we have about 1,300 grams to our brain. Dolphins have about 1,650, by the way. Gorillas have 800 grams. It takes about 1,000 grams to master spoken language. The Anunnaki had 3,300 grams. That's a lot of telepathic power. Okay, and that's because they have more gamma ray emissions on their planet, and once they came down here and they started living here, those that were born here, they weren't born with those gigantic cranial skulls, but of course we found these kinds of skulls all over the planet, and they're associated with increased telepathic abilities and telekinetic abilities and spiritual abilities and so forth. So this change is coming from the higher dimensions, coming down from the higher dimensions down, the seventh, the sixth, the fifth, the fourth, the third. Here we are in the third, and we're receiving it in the third dimension, reminding us of the ancient Hermetic saying within the mystery schools, as above, so below, as below, so above. In other words, the world we're in is a subset, let us say, of the astral. And the astral is a subset of the mental. The higher planes are the mother-father energies, and each successive plane comes down and densifies. So we have more density down here than the planes, let us say, below us, and we have less density than the ones below us, and we have more density than the ones above us. So we're someplace, towards the bottom, but not the very bottom. So our universe is actually comprised of many different dimensions, in fact. And this is one model that was used within the great mystery schools that talked about the number 7. 7 was always a sacred number, as was 12, because we have 7 major chakras. And so even though they knew that there were like 12 planets out there, if you counted the moon and the sun and so forth and so on, and Nibiru and some of the planets that we've only discovered in the last 200 or 300 years, in modern times, they knew about those, but they marked only 7. Okay, and that was because 7 was considered the sacred number. And what happens is we can see a lot of things that are below us, but it's harder for us to see that which is above us. Just like when you go to heaven, the astral plane or the mental plane, you can see the planes below. You have access to that information. Now, you're not encouraged to hang out and scare your relatives to death in the third dimension, but they will allow you to have visits sometimes if you still have affairs that you need to wrap up. So you can sort of see this is actually one of the models for this. The Arupa realms are the non-physical, non-form realms. The fifth dimension has a lot of forms. They still have, houses and cities and libraries and temples and all of that kind of stuff. We still can use bodies. And the fourth dimension, the third dimension, the second, the first, and so forth. But once we really move above the fifth dimension, we move into the realm of much more pure energy. Now, Michio Kaku, who's an incredible quantum physicist, along with Brian Greene and some of our other luminaries in current times, talks about the fact that there are at least 13 dimensions. Some believe that there are as many as 10 dimensions. So this is something that science has finally come to, in the last 20 years, discovering that, in fact, these dimensions are almost like they're describing it as curled up in one another, like layers of an onion. Okay, and that's actually how the ancients in the mystery schools described them. So we are all multidimensional beings. We source really from the divine. We have the spark of the divine, the spark of God within us. And as we come down through the dimensions, we put on layers. Okay, and these are the bodies, the subtle energy bodies that comprise our aura. And of course, we can't really participate in the third dimension very well unless we have a third dimensional body and so forth. And most of us don't know it, but we do have an astral body. We use it every night when we sleep, when we dream. We have a mental body, whether we're aware of it or not. And we call it, right now, the interface with that mental body is the mind or the brain, and so forth. But we know that even when the brain is damaged, even when someone's pronounced dead on the operating table, they go out and they have all sorts of incredible experiences, and they come back and they call them near-death experiences, and no one knows how it can work because, after all, they were brain dead at the time. So our mental body, our spiritual body exists beyond the physical world, whether we know it or not. Right now, our planet, that is also a living presence who has put up with so many different civilizations on this planet that have, rise and fall and rise and fall. Bless her heart that she's put up with us. She's at a pivotal time in evolution, and so are we because we live on her. So, this is, of course, the Mayan Hunab Ku. That's really a very deeply encoded Hermetic image. Here's the galactic plane. And when we're below the galactic plane, as I'm going to be showing you, we move in one direction. And when we go above the galactic plane, the poles reverse, the magnetic poles reverse, which is probably what we're going to have come up, whether it's in 30 years or it's in 150 years, is we're probably heading for a pole reversal, which is why the poles are melting. And this is normal. This is the normal mechanisms of this kind of change. But has this happened before? Absolutely, it has happened before. It's a celestial clock. So to contemplate these questions is to really stand back and realize that time didn't begin 5,000 years ago when traditional science would like to pretend that it did. It didn't even begin, 12,000 years ago with the fall of Atlantis, or 11,750 years ago, which is about when Atlantis fell for the last time or went down in the Great Flood. In fact, there have been earlier ages in Earth's history where there have been advanced societies, and we're just now finding the evidence for that. But of course, it completely shakes up the entire paradigm that we've been taught, so they don't really want to change it. But there are people like myself, people like Neil, people like many of the people you've been hearing the last few days, the Ancient Aliens show, they're just trying to bring this information to the forefront to look at the evidence that something has gone on that paints a bigger picture than what we've been told. So these are previous ages that we really only have myths and legends and artifacts, some artifacts. And of course, at the Pyramid Conference, we're going to be looking at some of those artifacts. So were there earlier ages on the earth? Absolutely, there were. Ancient people tell us, in fact, many tribal people are the ones who really have preserved this knowledge, that there have been either 3 or 4 previous ages. The Hopi say that we've had 3 before this one. This is the 4th age, and we're moving into the 5th sun, the 5th world. The Mayans also say that we're moving into the 5th world. The Toltecs, who claim to actually have given the Mayans their knowledge, claim that there were 5, this is the 5th world, and that we're moving into the 6th sun. Regardless of whether it's we're in the 4th world or we're in the 5th world, we're moving to the 5th sun or the 6th sun, we're up for a change. So at the end of the first age, the planet was destroyed by fire. And this could easily have happened through an asteroid strike. As we know, we have the remains of a planet in the asteroid belt out between Mars and Jupiter. And that was a very large planet. There are different names for it. Some call it Marduk, some call it Tiamat, some call it other things. But it was a water world. It was an Earth kind of planet, but it was much larger than our planet. So we've had a lot of asteroid debris, and every single year in October, November, and December, there's the torrid meteor shower that comes by. And I'm sure that it's, hit our planet many times. We have an average of 3,000 to 4,000 meteorites hit this planet every year. But most of them are small enough. They go into the water. They have a small impact crater. This could have been, at the time, 65 million years ago, when the asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out the dinosaurs. Or it could have been a time past that when humans were living on the planet. Legend tells us that at the end of the second age, we were destroyed by ice. In other words, there were still people who lived. Obviously, humanity survived at some level, but the poles shifted, ice formed, and so the time was very difficult for people to live in. And we know, even scientifically, that we have glacial and interglacial ages. So this makes total sense. At the end of the third age, we had the Great Flood. Now, in truth, it appears that we've had several large floods. Geologically, they say we've had one about 10,800 BC. And then about 1,000 years later, in 9,750 BC, which is the Great Flood that took down all of Atlantis, this was the Great Flood that we hear about with Noah's Ark all over the world. But these legends are in virtually every culture of the world, from China, Japan, Korea, the Mayans, the Aztec, the Native American Indians, the Druids, the Egyptians, the Greeks. So we know that it happened. So now we're nearing the end of the fourth age, which of course, when you start looking at these past statistics, this could sound very scary, couldn't it? What's going to happen? Well, really, that is the $64,000 question. And this is something that I could spend 6 hours doing a very long presentation on, and that would be still condensing it because there's a lot to say about it. But we're going to take a look at some things today. So the good news is that this next age is called the age of illumination. That's really the good news. So whatever it is that happens on the backside of this, we're moving into a golden age. So even though right now we look around us and we see terrible political strife, we see lies and misinformation, and we see, one group fighting against another. And as Edgar Casey would have said, they're the children of the law of one who are working for unity. And then they're the ones, as the Native Americans would say, that speak with forked tongue, or of the two-hearted ones, who are really about service to self and misrepresentation. And so right now it looks pretty bad, but the good news is on the other side of this change, we're going to move into a 1,000-year golden age. And this, of course, has been prophesied. Indian sages tell us that our solar system moves around the galaxy, and as it does so, it moves through 4 distinct ages. So let's take a look at these ages. In the Vedic tradition, they call them Yugas, okay? The Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. So this is a wheel of those ages. The Kali Yuga, which is where we are, is the shortest age. So let's just give it a unit number of 1. The Bronze Age is twice as long. So let's say it's the unit of 2. The Silver Age is twice as long, so a unit of 4 times the length of the Kali Yuga. And the Golden Age is 8 times the length of the Kali Yuga. So the good news is that the Golden Age always lasts much longer. And during the Golden Age, we're aware that we're souls. We're aware that we're connected to the divine, and our spiritual gifts and who we are fully awakened. In the Silver Age, we begin to fall asleep more. There's more doubt. In the Bronze Age, we become much more rational and, scientific. And, if we can't see it, it can't be true. So we lose access to some of that universal consciousness. And in the Kali Yuga, it's marked by superstition, ignorance, lies, and terrible acts like shootings and, rapes and pillages and Adolf Hitler and Mussolini and those kinds of crazinesses. So we have been in the Kali Yuga since around 3114 BC. But there are ages within ages. So we went into the dark of the dark during the Inquisition for 6.5 centuries. Horrible, terrible, book burning, talk about ignorance. People that had spiritual gifts were killed and burned at the stake. We began to move into the Bronze Age within the Kali Yuga 450 years ago during the Renaissance, which is great. We are now on the verge here of moving into the Silver Age within the Kali Yuga still. So people are waking up to their clairaudience, their clairvoyance, their healing abilities, their dreaming abilities. We're waking up to our connection with the spiritual cosmos and the spiritual world. So there's still lots of people over here in the scientific, prove it. It's like a Roman, can I bite it? Bite the coin and eat it, And then there are others who have made this shift, and a lot of you are those people. And we are trying to, of course, straddle the fence to be able to ground things in science so that we can help our brothers and sisters to cross over into realizing that there's a bigger picture. Now, these levels go up and down like a great sine wave. So here's the Kali Yuga, the Dwarpa or Bronze Age, the Treta or Silver, and the Sattva or Golden Age, going up the hill and then back down the hill. And this is another way of looking at it. And this is a real important graph. we move like a serpent. The whole universe moves in a serpentine motion. Our brain waves, our heartbeat. This has to do with the breath of God, or the Shekinah, or the divine feminine principle, the dove, the daughter principle. So we start the journey of 25,920 years here, and we move above the galactic equator. And at this time, the divine feminine rises, consciousness rises, and we move up into a golden age, okay? And then we slowly, slowly, slowly descend. When Atlantis fell for the last time was when we fell below the galactic equator 12,000 years ago. So we slowly descended. The mystery schools formed to try to preserve the knowledge, to try to bring people into morality and spiritual consciousness. And of course, then as we came up, we hit the dark of the dark. They say it's darkest before the dawn. And of course, here we are right in this center that takes about 1,000 years for us to pass through this galactic center. This is another way of looking at it, is how our sun, with of course all the planets around it, goes into what's called the dark rift. So the 2012 date was really where we are in the dark rift. So we still have another 450 years or so to move out of it. And this was always called shamanically the eagle's path, because it takes a lot of courage to be incarnated on a planet like this one during this time, as we all know. Now, we cross at about a 60-degree angle, creating a huge X in the sky. Okay, now this X got encoded into certain Hermetic symbols, and I'm a Hermetics teacher because I'm a student and a teacher of the great spiritual mysteries. But this X also represents the rising and the falling of the Big Dipper over the 25,920 year precession of the equinox, which was called the Great Year, okay, by the ancients, because they understood the mechanics of time. So you can sort of see how this also looks a little like the swastika, doesn't it? Now, the swastika was always a very holy symbol. As long as it rotated in this direction, it meant life, okay, and it meant change. And of course, here's the galactic equator. Here's the high point and the low point. And these points are the points of those 4 fixed ages, in fact. So the age of Aquarius is when we cross now. And of course, the other opposite is the age of Leo, when we've dropped below. The age of Taurus was down here, and the age of Scorpio is actually at the top of the chart. So we can see again how it kind of forms a big X. We're not parallel and we're not exactly perpendicular to the plane of the galaxy, but this is really how it works. So this symbol was created to represent that. That is called the Chi-Rho, and it's one of many Hermetic symbols that we teach within the Way of Truth Mystery School, and I teach within my mystery school, the Phoenix Fire Lodge. You can see the Alpha and the Omega. This is telling us it has to do with time, the beginning and end of time. And you see this cross below. And this cross is also connected with certain Hermetic symbols. The Tau cross, which is talking about the end of the cycles of time, and the P, which is the church took this and changed what used to be a shepherd's crook, meaning the good shepherd, the avatars, the masters that lead us through this minefield of change and transformation. They turned it into the symbol for pater, or father, because the church is basically patriarchal. So here we have the Alpha and the Omega. Now I want you to notice the serpent energy here. Like, if you don't know Hermetics and you don't know what this means, it's like, what the heck is this about? This is, again, the galactic equator. We're below it, we're above it, we're above it, and we're below it. It's all connected. It looks very much like a serpent, doesn't it? So the serpent is connected. Again, it's a very deep Hermetic symbol that's connected with Kundalini, a spiritual awakening. There's so much to say. And we see here the same energy within the wonderful Tao symbol of the yin and the yang, representing, again, these same cycles, the male within the female within the male. And this has to do with the spiritual technology of Ascension, which I'll be talking about next week when I talk about the divine masculine and feminine. So hidden in plain sight, again, here's the Vatican, who borrowed all these symbols from the mystery schools. They've encoded the Chi-Rho as the keys to the kingdom, although they didn't tell us what they were, did they? And here's the beehive hat with the fleur-de-lis, which is a symbol, literally, of the mystery schools. It's a symbol of the Egyptian pharaohs. There were the beekeepers, and the fleur-de-lis became the stylized version of the bee. So here we have the left-hand path, the right-hand path, or we could say the left side of our brain, the right side of our brain, the logical, the intuitive, but the path of mastery is the path of balance in between. And I'll be talking about that again next week with Portal to Ascension. That Divine Masculine Feminine seminar is on Saturday, and it's done through Neil with Portal to Ascension, so I'm sure you can find it on his site. So let's look at the dynamics of how this works. In the spring equinox, when we are on Earth and we look and we see the sun rising in the spring on March 23rd, the equinox, we look and see what is the celestial backdrop of stars, the constellation that's behind the sun at that time. And that marks what the age is. Now, the circle is 360 degrees, right? So divide 12 astrological signs into 360. So each one of these signs is basically 30 degrees wide or 30 degrees fat. It takes 72 years to move 1 degree. That's a lot. So that means for us to move through all 30 degrees of a particular sign, it takes around 2,160 years. So you just kind of do the math. 2,160 years times 12 signs gives us the entire precession of the equinox, 25,920 years. So where we are right now, we have been, if we just reverse this and put the Earth over here, we've been in Pisces for 2,000 years, okay, or 2,100 years. So Jesus came in, around 150 years into Pisces. So here we are, we're literally right on the edge between Pisces and Aquarius now. Okay, which is pretty interesting. In fact, 2012 was year number 1 of 1 degree of Aquarius. So that means 72 years, we're whatever we are, a few years into it. So we're 72 years from 2001, we will move to 2012, we will move to degree number 2. Okay, and you can see all the advancements we've made. The esoteric societies teach us that we moved into 0 degrees of Aquarius in 1939. So if you add 72 years to that, you come to 2011. And so you can see from 1939 all the progress we made in technology, computers, cell phones, satellites, space travel, and so forth. That's Aquarius. And there's a lot to say about it. So from Earth's point of view, you look at the sun, we see this celestial backdrop. In this case, it would have been Taurus. That's 4,400 to 2,200 BC, where they were building lots of monuments that were made to last. Okay, so this acts like a giant clock, a giant cosmic clock. That's why astronomy and astrology is a very important study. And this is why the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, the Indians, the Egyptians, all the Druids, everyone was obsessed with the stars because they understood that it's a celestial clock. So when we are pointing towards the galactic center, it's like getting, there's rabbit ears on TVs. It's like getting a straight signal, a very good signal on our television. Our television happens to be the vibration of consciousness on our Earth. When we go into the Silver Age, the rabbit ears get moved a little and there's interference on the line. When we go to the Bronze Age, the rabbit ears get even more off kilter and there's much more static. And during the Iron Age, we're relatively asleep at the wheel. And so we are waking up as a consciousness on this planet within the Kali Yuga, because we are moving into the Silver Age within it. Now, the Earth is kind of like a rotating top, and think of the North Pole as being really the rabbit ears, okay, that allow the reception to come in. When we're pointing towards Polaris, which has been our pole star, we're sort of not receiving a good signal. When we're pointing towards Vega, which is the brightest star in the constellation Lyra, we are getting a really good signal, okay? It looks like the harp of heaven. It's very close to the galactic center. Okay, so this is the flat plate of the ecliptic. That's the flat inner tube that all the planets go around on. It's 7 degrees. This is the tilt of the Earth that allows us to have our 4 seasons. And then this is the rotating top that is the rabbit ears based on the kind of clarity of reception we're getting from the galactic center. Now, this is another way of looking at it. Here, 2000 BC, our pole star was Thuban. Our pole star has been Polaris, but we're shifting over this direction, and all the way up 12,000 years from now, we're in Lyra. Okay, and here's Cygnus, where that big explosion is happening right now. So this kind of gives you, these are called the eternal stars. That's what they are, because they're seen up in the North Pole and they don't move. Okay, I mean, of course, maybe they do move, but from our point of view, they're constant. They're not rising and setting the same way that a lot of the other stars are. So what's going to happen to us in this next shift of the ages? A very big subject. The good news is the frequencies are rising, they're not falling. Okay, so the good news is that we are in the wave of support from the universe to awaken. That really helps. So this allows an activation of Earth from the galactic center, so we begin to wake up as conscious beings. And this frequency is being sent in, and you know, the more you meditate, the more you tune into this yourself, the more attuned you'll become. You may wind up getting symbols. This is one of the reasons why the mystery schools, you know, they preserve this knowledge for thousands of years for this time. And this is why the Way of Truth Mystery School and the mystery schools that I'm teaching are so very important for people now, because it gives them a framework to understand how it all fits together. So it bathes the Earth to transform consciousness and biology. And in fact, there are experiments that they've discovered where they're sending photonic light into ducks, through ducks, into chickens who are birthing eggs, and the chickens are born, the little eggs, half duck, half chicken. In other words, the photonic light is literally picking up the DNA of the duck without any genetic hanky-panky. It's literally being carried on the light wave itself. And this is why we hear this stuff about the crystal children and the indigo children, because it's awakening powers and memory within us. It's awakening our DNA. And it's allowing us to begin to start to have a glimpse of who we really are, and to connect with the fact that we are eternal souls, who volunteered to come down here at this time to have this experience, to help the planet and to help our less aware brothers and sisters maybe to awaken. And so this allows us to begin to download higher consciousness from the galactic mind. This is also a time when the divine feminine must rise, because we're very out of balance. The masculine, you know, has many beautiful qualities, but when it gets out of balance, as we can see, we have war, 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 and more war. That military industrial complex that Grant Cameron was talking about. So the divine feminine must come up in order to help heal the planet and balance the divine masculine, which I'll be talking about next week. This is a time also of us beginning to awaken that heart consciousness, which is what Christ was really here for. I mean, he basically, you know, said the kingdom of heaven is within, forgiveness is the key, love is the answer, you know, and do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. He planted the seeds, and this is the time for the seeds to awaken within every person. So as this age of Aquarius comes in, the Hermetic symbol is important. We literally see a being from the stars pouring down knowledge onto the planet. This is why we see channeling and extraterrestrials and star beings and legends and myths. This is the time when that hidden secret knowledge must come forward, and we're being given assistance by galactic forces. This is a time when the secrets of the cosmos begin to wake up, open up, and we begin to put science, religion, philosophy, and spirituality back together instead of having them so separated. This is a time when we have a lot of interest in our planet from a lot of different forces. And some of them really aren't good, but a lot of them are very benevolent and very good. And we have to be discerning. This is extremely important. Yes, we may all be souls, but there are souls at different levels of evolution. And some souls are interested in elevating and empowering us for all the right reasons, and others are interested in keeping us suppressed and asleep at the wheel and kind of, you know, distracted so that they can, you know, use us for their own purposes. So discernment's a real important piece. But we are getting help from not only some of the higher forces and the other dimensions and some of the benevolent extraterrestrials, but also from inner earth beings who have been there for a long time. This is a whole big conversation to talk about. But those beings have lived inside the earth and they have developed very peaceful civilizations. There's 7 different races, including human giants, and they preserve some of the best things of the Lemurian and the Atlantean cultures. And they actually have decided to help us, and they have helped us at other times. After these gigantic floods, they will pick groups that have lived more honorable lives and still save them. And this is what a lot of the Hopi caves are about, and a lot of the caves in Turkey, as they preserved elements of our civilization that are less warlike and less self-destructive. And of course, we can see that we've got that peace within us. We do seem to be, you know, both, you know, incredibly beautiful, conscious, loving beings, and also warlike, destructive beings. This is also the time of the arrival of the indigo children. These are higher consciousness beings who have volunteered to come in and to take human bodies, many times being born in very dysfunctional homes. And I know because I not only am one of them, but I do readings and healings for these beautiful beings all the time who literally, many of them have a history on this planet. They've had other lifetimes here, but they've returned because they understand the importance of this time to help humanity. So they, Dolores Cannon, who was a very dear friend of mine, who's passed over to the other side, but still very active, believe me, she talked about them having come in 3 waves. They began to be born before World War II. And then, of course, once World War II started, they were like, whoa, these people are real barbarians, hold the bus. So they waited until the war was over, and they started coming in as the baby boomers in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. And then there were some born from the 1980s on. And many of them grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth, and 80s. And they've been changing the paradigm. And you guys are probably them. Now, there's been a whole nother wave that has come in. These are some of their traits: a strong connection to dreams, lower than normal body temperature. I'm usually 96.4, a love of nature and animals, naturally very psychic, an interest in ancient knowledge, forward thinking, unprejudiced, spiritually knowing and questioning, naturally spiritual healers and teachers, and they inadvertently can have weird things happen with magnetics, like make watches stop. They have come in really to help heal the planet and shift the paradigms of consciousness, transmitting vibrations through art, music, science, charities, New Age consciousness groups, and helping to really shift the consciousness altogether. And they're working together like we are in this paradigm, like other groups are, whether they're environmental groups or they're political groups that are trying to, you know, work for democracy and fairness. Now, since the 1990s, we've been seeing these crystal children, and they exhibit even more of these kinds of traits, including, you know, being able to make plants grow literally by sending energy with their hands, being able to have miraculous healings. They're very smart. They have naturally strong sense of a mission when they're young, but they don't feel like they fit in a lot of times because, let's face it, they're kind of head and shoulders above the normal, you know, kids that aren't very conscious. So they're often bored with typical educational programs, and a lot of times the parents will put them on Ritalin, which is horrible for them, mess them up altogether, and so they'll be diagnosed for ADD. But it's because they've come in with a mission and they're young and they don't know how to get to the mission yet. So it's really important that we protect them from the dark side. because the dark side definitely would like to short circuit their mission so that they're not able to help us. Many of these souls, as I said, have very special abilities, including telekinetic ability, telepathy, communication with animals, a love of nature, light that comes from their hands that's visible, miraculous healing powers, accelerating plant growth, precognitive dreams, and an innate understanding of God and the cosmos. So this is a time when a lot of these secrets are coming forth, and we're beginning to understand that DNA is an information code, and that we actually have had many different groups that have, let us say, interbred with us. The Pleiadians, the Anunnaki, the Syrians, we have a lot of different DNA locked within us, but a lot of it is dormant, and we must reawaken it. But we can only do so if we're in a heart space. It is love that awakens our connection to the cosmos and awakens that connection within ourselves. And we must realize that we're really meant to be a part of this universe and to live in harmony with it, and not to constantly be creating discord, division, prejudice, and chaos. So it's
Just
very
giving
much
you
a
a few
time,
minute warning, sweetie.
it's very much a time for us to go into the heart, to heal the planet and ourselves, and to move into unity with one another and connect with these divine origins within us, lighting that eternal flame that lives within us all, walking the path of ascension through making different choices. We can change this planet, but we cannot be passive. To change it, we must work in concert with the light and with one another to shift these paradigms to something that's more constructive. And this will lead us really to creating a paradisical world instead of a world that's so rife with conflict. So I know we're wrapping this up, but my website's my name, triciamccannon.com. And I will end this so that I can just check in with Joni and sort of see how we're doing with our time.
You're
Well,
right on time. I don't know how you manage to go interdimensional, subdimensional, and I don't know, horizontal dimensional. You are fantastic, Tricia. Such outstanding information. You're one of my wisdom teachers. I just want anyone to know that if you have a chance to have a private session with Tricia, it is outstanding. She gives you your whole history. And
thank you,
it's just
Joni. And
great.
Neil is with us, I see.
I know, and
Yay.
I understand you have some events coming up with Neil, right?
Yeah. Neil, can you tell them what time the
Yeah.
events are the next 2 weeks?
Yes. First, let me tell everybody that we've done a lot of events with a lot of people, but we've definitely done probably more events with Tricia than any other individual speaker. I don't even know how many hours we have now, but we've done many events together, and we do have 2 events coming up this next weekend, posted in the YouTube, and I've also posted in the room. But we do have Rebirth of the Divine Feminine and Sacred Masculine with Tricia on Saturday, May 29th. And that's going to be at 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And do you want to just tell us a couple of minutes of what people can expect from this?
Yeah, the divine feminine and masculine is a big subject because it's not just, about, your dating life. It's really about a lot more than that. It's really about mastery. It's about learning how to access both sides of the brain in a spiritual technology that awakens the third eye and allows us to have access into these inner realms that we've been talking about. So that's one of the places we're gonna be going next week. And the hours are what 3 to 6 East Coast time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so 12 to 3 Pacific time. And then the following week on Sunday, we have a pyramid conference on the 6th, right?
Yeah, so this one I'm excited about. I'm excited about all our events, but I'm definitely excited about this one because I have wanted to do an event on pyramids, just awareness of pyramids for multiple years, just like many of the events that we end up doing. They're like 3 to 4 years percolating in my consciousness before they manifest into a physical event. And one of them is just like a really in-depth exploration of pyramids. Tricia actually probably inspired me to do this even more so because she's probably spoke about pyramid awareness on our platform more than anyone. We did the Antarctica webinar. We did 2 different events on Atlantis. We did a worldwide pyramid culture event. So I had to have Tricia be a part of it. But I just want to share really quick who's going to be on it. And let me just read this to everybody, just so you can kind of get a feel for the intention for this event. Okay. The existence of pyramids worldwide has long been an enigma, stirring humanity to search deep into its ancient origins. The mysteries of the pyramids are many. Common answers to these mysteries do not always satisfy the curious. Special guest presenters William Henry, Tricia McCannon, Dr. Sam, Michael Feely, Pari Patri, Brahmishi Patrigi, Rico Paganini, and Charles Zeiss in this all-day long pyramid knowledge conference will share curiosity-quelling details from their many years of research, insight, and knowledge about the worldwide pyramid phenomena. So it's going to be extremely amazing. We have, I think, 10 speakers, and it's going to be for 11 hours all day, and you get unlimited replay access. Not only are we going to talk about healing properties, ancient civilizations, the timeline of humanity, the mathematical connection to the pyramids, the science behind the pyramids, the connection to different star systems and the alignments of pyramids. It's going to be a really full circle awareness event, and I'm just excited to present this, and I'm really happy that you're going to be a part of it, Tricia.
Oh, it's always my pleasure. And what's interesting is I I didn't read what I was supposed to talk about because we planned this so long ago. And so I created a whole nother presentation on pyramids all over the world. There are over 750,000 of them.
We can change your title if you want to do something different.
Well, let's talk about it because we should definitely talk about it. Anyway,
Okay.
it's a great presentation, but if you have that covered, I'm happy to talk about Atlantis because
Oh my God. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about the pyramids, Tricia. I'm going to be attending because I don't see how anyone could go to Egypt without this knowledge.
Yeah, well,
Next
the
level.
thing is, it's not just Egypt, although, of course, the Great Pyramid sits on the 30th parallel, so it's in the dead center of the whole geographic landmass in the world. So that was not by accident. But the truth is that there are pyramids under the ocean. I have so many
Yes.
pyramids. There's a lot of pyramids, and we've just scratched the surface. In fact, archaeologists at the University of Alabama have discovered 16 pyramids buried underneath the land on either side of the Nile. And of course, the Egyptian government won't even allow them to. They went down and found one of them, but they were like, nope, now you're not allowed to. But this is pre-flood. This is
Wow.
before the flood. Yes,
Well,
and this is traditional science. So
I think you should do what you want to do because we do have other speakers that will speak about Atlantis. I know William Henry is going to be bringing up Atlantis in his work too. So if you want to do worldwide pyramid culture, we'll talk about it later. But whatever you feel is best.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Maybe tomorrow afternoon or something, if that works for you.
Tomorrow's fourth day of the conference, so I'll call you next
Monday.
week.
How about Monday? Monday. Yes, because I have time. I have to have time to, prepare. So no problem. I hope you got to see some of this, Neil. It was fun.
I was there the whole time. I saw the whole thing.
Challenging to do it
Tricia,
in an hour.
I have so many questions because I just got certified as a Yuga cycles instructor from Ananda College. I just took a whole course on it and I'm about to go to the next one. There's a lot of information there that seems to be limited, but it seems like you have you have another level of awareness that doesn't include just the Vedic texts that talk about this, which includes the cycles within cycles. So I think we need to have a longer conversation because I want to have a fuller picture of what's going on,
Yeah, those Eastern masters were so profound and amazing in their own right. But this has been one of my big things for 20 or 30 years. I've been, really trying to put the puzzle together about where are we, what's happening, how does the celestial clock work, why do the ETs come back and forth, and also now the inner earth people, which I love a lot of the inner earth people. And we're not talking about the strange, weird ones that are kind of like, in between the layers. We're talking about the ones that have held the higher consciousness on this planet for thousands and thousands of years. And they've actually, they pretended to be, let's say from outer space because they didn't want their bagua disturbed by us crazy warmongering people, but they have tried to help the human race and bring us knowledge. And, I'm glad that we're starting to know something about them. And Lord knows, I hope that I hope that the prophecies are that they will come forward in the last days, and that this is really critical. It's a critical piece. It's a big conversation.
Right. Well, listen, if you have some time, hop in the chat room. I know people are going to want to talk to you, love. And I just am so happy I got to see you.
Well, we also have Phil Grouper coming, and I
yeah,
love
he's
Phil
coming
Grouper.
right now.
He
So
is next, and he's amazing. And I'm going to stay on and listen to him because, he's
all right, we'll just stop our videos, hon, but you can stay on. Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
All
Love you,
right.
Tricia.